Things really weren't getting better. They tried to fight through it, and Robert Saleh owed it to his locker room to keep doing the best thing that he could do to help his football team win. It was not to have Zach Wilson at quarterback.
This is, without a doubt, the most dense topic that I need to cover on this channel. And as a result, I will admit I have been procrastinating a little bit, primarily because I'm scared that I'll miss something. It's the worst feeling on earth whenever there's a bunch of details I need to include, and I forget to include a very important piece of information.
Not today!
I made sure I have each and every bullet point down for this situation. I promise you we are going to cover this situation from each and every angle. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. And of course, follow us on Instagram if you are interested in seeing who I picked tonight for prize picks. A link to that's in the description down below as well. You get up to $100 in a deposit match when you use my promo code Mikerophone. Now that we got all of that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I don't think a better script could have been written. I mean, from the moment that Zach Wilson got benched following his game versus the New England Patriots, I think a part of us all felt like Mike White was going to come out here and completely dominate the Chicago Bears. I don't want to sound like the LeBron James meme, and you can let me know in the comment section down below if it does sound like that, because I don't think I verbally said it in any of my videos, but I think a part of us all felt like Mike White was going to come out and dominate against the poor Chicago Bears defense, just based upon the interviews that he gave, just based upon his approach to the game of football. And I think that's what makes this quarterback controversy between Zach Wilson and Mike White so fascinating. I mean, I would even go as far as to say that it's by far the most fascinating QB controversy we've had in the past decade. Not necessarily from a talent standpoint, more so from what each of these players represent, how the team feels about both of these players, which we're going to give you guys empirical evidence about how the team feels about Zach Wilson versus Mike White. But on top of that, just looking at both of these players' path to the NFL and the amount of chances that Zach Wilson is getting versus Mike White, it's such an interesting scenario, and we need to talk about each and every part about this. So we have multiple points to cover, and the first thing is Mike White completely dominated the Chicago Bears. I mean, 3 touchdowns, 315 passing yards. Zach Wilson hasn't even had a 3 passing TD game in his entire career. But the very first thing we need to talk about is how much this New York Jets team clearly loves Mike White over Zach Wilson. It's actually insane. It's something that I think needs to be talked about more, because at the end of the day, it's a quarterback's job to bring a team together. As a matter of fact, Mike White fully understands that that's his job. I mean, look at this interview.
I think personally, the way I approach the quarterback position is being a calming presence in the huddle, especially when things aren't going well, because that's when things can start to spiral and snowball. But it's just distributing the ball and letting them be who they are. They're all in that locker room for a reason. This is the NFL. Everybody in that wears pads on Sundays are very good, and you just got to get them the ball and get their confidence going. And once someone's confidence is up, I believe at least that you'll see their game go.
So understanding that a QB's job is more than just studying the plays and knowing where wide receivers are going to be and being able to improvise on the fly and being able to intake information at a rapid rate, Mike White understands how important it is to be a leader and to calm everyone down around him and be very cool under pressure. And he's being tested probably the most that he has been in his entire career, because obviously the New York Jets are going to look for whatever reason whatsoever to give Zach Wilson another opportunity. Why? Zach Wilson is a former number 2 overall pick. I mean, they drafted this kid over the likes of Justin Fields, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons, although no one really saw Micah Parsons coming. I mean, not even I did. I don't think anyone did, but I digress. So obviously the New York Jets are in this unique situation where you want the number 2 overall pick that you invested tremendous amounts of capital to succeed, but the number 2 overall pick is not only playing so horrifically that you needed to bench him, but he also lost the team. Bear in mind, when the New York Jets lost to the New England Patriots in the embarrassing fashion that they did, Zach Wilson didn't hold himself accountable for the horrific day he had. I mean, you guys already seen this clip billions of times.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
But rookie wide receiver Garrett Wilson called out the offense. This is probably something Zach Wilson should have done, but Garrett Wilson did it for him.
Sorry. We out here looking sorry, man. And we're not sorry. So that's why it really hurts, you know. We know that we're better than that. That's why it hurts. Because we can do more. And honestly, I feel like they got to put some more trust in the receiver room. I feel like we can go up and make plays, do things, and I don't know if everyone feel that way, but hopefully, by the time we get around next week, everyone feel that way. And we got to have a great week of practice.
And honestly, man, not a bold take at all. Everyone would agree. The New York Jets played like absolute dog shit versus the New England Patriots. And when Zach Wilson was asked why they played so horrifically, he said this.
I think you got to put into account it's windy as hell out there too, guys. There's times where you can't just completely try and take these shots down the field. I mean, you can see how much it's moving out there. So, we were trying to establish the run game. Same with what the Patriots were trying to do as well. They're not out there chucking 30, 40-yard throws down the field either.
And it's really funny because Zach Wilson cried about the wind versus the New England Patriots, which, bear in mind, Mac Jones came out here and played fine during the windy conditions versus a very challenging New York Jets team. Yet 1 week later, Mike White nearly threw for 400 yards in the pouring rain. Now, here's the crazy part. 1 week later, following the win versus the Chicago Bears, when Garrett Wilson was asked about the fact that he literally called out the New York Jets offense, this is what he had to say about it.
I definitely feel like it did. I didn't mean any harm to anyone, by saying it, and I don't think anyone took it that way, luckily, honestly, I feel like people was happy I said it.
Bear in mind, Garrett Wilson was really harsh. I mean, he said it straight up. Let's call it like it is. We have to be better in the passing game if we want to be where we want to be at. And we know we can be there. That's the most frustrating part. We don't have to be in games like this. They didn't even score on offense and we lost the game. Me personally, I think we have to take it for what it is. We got our beat on offense and the results showed. And even prior to this, man, we covered this in the past, and if you want to get a good laugh, go look at the comment section of this video. When Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims both demanded a trade prior to the trade deadline, there's a reason for that. You didn't hear it directly from the media. I may have floated it out there, but the primary reason was Zach Wilson was not finding Elijah Moore. Denzel Mims was barely playing. They weren't getting the opportunities they needed, and even Garrett Wilson wasn't performing that well with Zach Wilson under center. At this point, I've stated multiple times, the New York Jets have done a phenomenal job building around Zach Wilson. I mean, defensively, the results speak for themselves. Offensively, they traded up to get Elijah Vera Tucker. They drafted Mekhi Becton prior to drafting Zach Wilson. Unfortunately, he couldn't stay healthy. They are loaded at the wide receiver position. There's not necessarily a star wide receiver on the team, but it's not like you have the Chicago Bears wide receiving court over there, if you know what I'm saying. Garrett Wilson was selected with a first-round pick this year in the NFL draft. Corey Davis was a former first-round pick as well, a former top 10 pick. So they're not necessarily Pro Bowl wide receivers. Maybe a reason for that is because of the quarterback play they're receiving. But ladies and gentlemen, we are not done. I mean, if the Garrett Wilson interviews aren't enough, we could go all the way back to a year ago, even before this whole fiasco started, where Rich Cimini even mentioned how Mike White said that his teammates won't stop chanting his name in the locker room. And he said with a smile, it has to stop at some point. I mean, if you forget, even before Mike White started a single game under center for the New York Jets this season, had Corey Davis saying this.
He knows how to run an operation and run it pretty smooth and get guys where they need to be. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what he's going to do and excited to have him out there.
So the issue with Zach Wilson isn't only the fact that he is failing on offense when he's on the field as a quarterback, but on top of that, he's just failing as a leader. His teammates simply do not like him. They are cheering and rooting for Mike White like crazy. I mean, you guys just saw that image of Mike White's teammates celebrating with him after he successfully led them to a win versus the Chicago Bears. But on top of that, multiple of his teammates posted this onto Instagram, including CJ Uzoma that captioned it, just having some Sunday fun day with the boys. I mean, everyone seems excited about Mike White's success here. As a result, you're seeing crazy statistics like this. The last two QBs with multiple games of 300 passing yards and 3 TDs in their first 4 starts, Patrick Mahomes and Mike White, which I love stats like that. I think it's hysterical. On top of that, PrizePicks projected that Mike White was going to throw either higher or lower than 226.5 passing yards throughout the entire game. Mike White was able to throw for 198 passing yards in the first half alone. Now, the thing that makes this QB controversy so unique and so special is when you compare Zach Wilson to Mike White, their journeys to the NFL are so different. I mean, Zach Wilson, obviously a lot of people are talking about how he comes from a wealthy family in a privileged neighborhood in Utah. And to be honest, man, I don't put a lot of stock into that. I don't think if someone was raised with a lot of money necessarily makes them less likely to hold themselves accountable, because at the end of the day, you could be rich and bring up your children properly, and you could be poor and the child could come out really well as a result of overcoming their struggle. I don't really put stock into that. I just think the story's interesting. Zach Wilson comes from a relatively wealthy family, has lived a fairly privileged life. In his final season at BYU, out of seemingly nowhere, this man shot up draft boards. Bear in mind, the 2021 NFL draft was the second draft I covered as a YouTuber, and I've never been more locked into an NFL draft, primarily because everyone was saying Trevor Lawrence was the most can't-miss prospect since the days of Andrew Luck. Justin Fields is without a doubt such a good number 2 overall pick that he would have went number 1 overall in any draft that Trevor Lawrence wasn't there. Then you have the big project QB like Trey Lance. The right team gets their hands on him, he could potentially be the best QB in the class. You have the safe QB in Mac Jones, the most NFL ready, could process information really quickly. And for the most part, up until maybe like February, January of that year, 2021,
I didn't know who Zach Wilson was.
And it caused me to have this bizarre theory, and I guess this is what I like to call my Mitchell Trubisky theory, and it could be wrong, it's the theory. Could there have been a chance that Zach Wilson's family paid off some scouts in order to boost his draft stock in a very competitive NFL draft? Because there has been rumors that that's what Mitchell Trubisky's family did during the 2017 NFL draft. Despite him playing only 11 games at North Carolina, Mitchell Trubisky was able to be drafted with the number 2 overall pick. I mean, over the likes of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. At the time, no one knew Patrick Mahomes was going to be as good as he ended up being. I just felt like Zach Wilson's ascent was always fairly random. And to be honest, at the end of the day, the New York Jets obviously are rooting for Zach Wilson to win in this situation. It would be a horrible look if you benched your number 2 overall pick just a few games into his career and the backup ended up being significantly better. But I have to respect Mike White and the way he's approaching this, because he understands that this is it. This is his only shot. This is his only opportunity. He has the opportunity to start, and if he continues to succeed, he will be the starter for the rest of the year. You're not going to bench Mike White for Zach Wilson. If Mike White's throwing for 300 plus passing yards a game, your team is dominating both offensively and defensively, or at least you have a QB that isn't screwing things up offensively, because in that case, the Jets could make a deep run in this year's playoffs. Mike White's situation is so unique because in the 2018 NFL draft, he was a 5th round pick by my Dallas Cowboys. Actually, a friend of mine is married to him. No, I've never met said friend of friend, but I just thought this is what made it interesting, because when I was in dental school, this friend would always flex how she was going to weddings and Dak Prescott would be there, and I would be a little salty, but for the most part, I thought that's a cool thing to include in this video. But Mike White was a 5th round pick. After his time with the Dallas Cowboys, he would sign with the New York Jets. With the New York Jets, he wouldn't get much of an opportunity. The Jets didn't necessarily perceive him as the future at QB. If they did, they wouldn't have drafted Zach Wilson to begin with. Mike White had to sit down and wait for his opportunity. Zach Wilson was essentially just handed it to him as a number 2 overall pick based upon one remarkable throw he made at the NFL Combine. Don't get me wrong, if you could harness Zach Wilson's potential, he could become one of the best players in the NFL. The question is he mature enough to get that type of potential out of him? And if your team is clicking the way they're clicking, do you really want to burn a season trying to develop Zach Wilson when you have this great opportunity with Mike White? The team loves Mike White, but it's like the classic story of like rich privileged kid coming from like blue collar kid or kid that had to really work for his opportunity, and that kind of makes Mike White an underdog that everyone's rooting for. But I think there's one major thing that most people are not including in their analysis of this. Mike White faced off against a fairly easy team versus the Chicago Bears. I mean, the NFL is hard, and for all you know, Zach Wilson may have had a horrific game against the Chicago Bears, or he may have had a bounce back game versus the Chicago Bears. But Mike White probably has the biggest game of his career this upcoming week. A game that without a doubt can alter the trajectory of the rest of his career. The New York Jets, who are 7-4, face off against the 9-2 Minnesota Vikings. So if Mike White comes out and performs really well versus the Vikings, the excuse that he faced off against a terrible team is no longer there. Yes, you can make the argument that the Minnesota Minnesota Vikings are the worst 9-2 team in NFL history because of their point differential and whatnot. But regardless, a win versus the Minnesota Vikings would do wonders for the locker room, would do wonders for Mike White's confidence, would make the coaching staff feel good about their chances in the playoffs, would bring the team together even more. And it seems like they're already very together to begin with. The team, like I've said multiple times in this video so far, absolutely loves Mike White. And Mike White truly possesses tremendous leadership qualities. If he's able to dominate versus the Minnesota Vikings, or if he's able to even have like a 3-touchdown, 1-interception game and the Jets win, then the job is obviously going to be Mike White's moving forward. That's going to open up a question about what Zach Wilson's future is going to be, because apparently Zach Wilson's camp is not really happy about the situation. So according to, and I'm going to preface this, I don't really trust this source. He used to work for CBS, doesn't work for CBS anymore. This is the first time I'm citing him since. I don't know if you guys know of Jason La Canfora, so do with that information what you may. I'm just going to bring you guys the information from him. According to Jason La Canfora, Zach Wilson doesn't have a future there. He lost his job to Mike effing White. You think he wants to be there? No. His agents say you took this kid 2nd overall and that's the look you gave him. That's how little you believe in him. No, it's over. I don't know what they get for him, but it's over. He's not a part of their immediate future, and their immediate future is everything. And in the offseason, both sides are going to have a bunch of reasons why they should move on. If this thing goes off the rails a couple weeks from now because of injury or whatever, the buggy turns into a pumpkin or whatever. I think they go to Joe Flacco. I don't think they go back to Zach Wilson. I don't think that's tenable. So it looks like Zach Wilson is trending towards Josh Rosen bust territory, where if the New York Jets find their long-term starter in Mike White, chances are they're going to trade Zach Wilson to any team that wants to take on Zach Wilson. My guess being Carolina Panthers, unless the Carolina Panthers decide to finally move on from the whole philosophy of taking on project QBs. But it looks like that's where Zach Wilson is currently trending. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this situation. I made sure to cover this situation from each and every angle that I could. Do you think Zach Wilson ever gets a chance in the NFL again, or do you think it's Mike White's season for the rest of the season? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.